Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. Joining me in the studio via Skype this evening as our Rural Affairs correspondent, Day Tucker. Welcome back to the show, Day, after a period of absence due to lambing. Enough to carry on with the show now, Day. And also joining me this evening is Loch Lomond, Save Loch Lomond campaigner Sam Payton. Welcome back, Sam.
Hi Gordon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Well, listen, I'm going to dive straight into the coronavirus update first of all, and then I'll read our first story and we can discuss that in a moment. So, pardon me. The coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today in Scotland, there has been a total of 61,696 coronavirus tests concluded. And of these, 49,430 tests were confirmed negative. 12,266 tests were positive. 99 patients were in intensive care last night, with 91 of these having tested positive. There was a total of 1,720 people in hospital with either confirmed or suspected COVID-19. This marks an increase of 169 confirmed cases since yesterday. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by coronavirus COVID-19 infection has sadly risen to 1,576. This number only includes those who died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK figures available show that 28,734 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have now sadly died from their illness, an increase of 288. Again, this only refers to those who have died in hospital following a positive test. Now, on the back of this, today, we can now say that the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is announcing the Scottish Government's framework to implement the Test, Trace, Isolate and Support scheme as the next phase of the strategy to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The framework sets the Scottish Government's plans, which will be used to test everyone reporting COVID-19 symptoms, to get that person to self-isolate immediately and then trace back all the people that they have come into contact with. If the test comes back positive, the contact tracers will immediately get in touch with all those contacts to get them to self-isolate and to test them. The process repeats for each individual reporting symptoms or identified as a contact of someone who tested positive. Ms Sturgeon warned that people might find themselves having to self-isolate several times as others have come into contact with others who have come into contact test positive for COVID-19. She went on to say that this would mean expanding testing capacity from the 12,000 expected to become available by the middle of May to 15,500, and she also estimated that an additional 2,000 contract tracers would be required. The First Minister also pointed out the need that some people will have to be supported during periods of self-isolation, and that they would be looking to the arrangements in place for the shielded group, emphasising that this is policy Scotland is called Test, Trace, Isolate and Support. The Scottish Greens welcomed the Scottish Government's strategy to test, trace, isolate cases of COVID-19, but have called for the proposal to be given an urgent timescale. The paper published today commits the Scottish Government to undertake rigorous testing and tracing strategy, much like the Scottish Greens have been calling for. But at a press briefing, the First Minister would only say that enhanced measures would be in place by the end of May. Now, Day, I'd like to take your comments first on this, since I haven't spoken to you for such a long time. But this sounds like a good idea in principle.
Yeah, I've not been very lucid.
Yeah, well, the First Minister has come up with something which has been called for quite a while now, with this testing, tracing and finding, and supporting people with the COVID-19 virus. Sounds like a good idea.
Yes, it does. And it was mooted a long time earlier, but she hung off because she was trying to go with the Four Nations action plan.
From your response, Day, I take it that you disapprove of this delay in implementing this. Is this something you felt strongly about at the time?
I mean, I'm just an ordinary person and I have no great depth of knowledge, but my instinct is if you can trace, then it is a very important tool to try and control the whole thing. And as a farmer, we know how important it is to trace livestock that have a disease. And the reason that Scotland is free from TB with livestock is because anything that these animals are tested on a regular basis. And if there is found to be a TB carrier, then the whole farm is shut down. And all the livestock have to stay there until, further exploration into it. So we understand, although we're talking about human beings, it is a whole bigger problem.
Okay, thank you for that, Day. If I can come to you now, Sam. The First Minister appeared to be a little bit vague on when this is about to start, and would only say that enhanced measures would be in place by the end of May. I'm wondering whether this new this new sort of test and trace and support scheme is actually so new that they haven't quite got it ready yet. It sounds that way.
I think it's a kind of difficult one, isn't it? Because the kind of the trace and test scheme really should have been in, as I agree with Dave. It's very important and it's vital regarding the pandemic. But I'm guessing that there's a lot of there's lots of logistic things that have got to get in place, and it would have been nicer to have it a bit sooner. And I think, it would be good to have a timescale, because I think the way we think in our day and age, we want targets, we want timescales, we want to know when everything, timetables and everything, how everything's going to work and how it's going to be implemented. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly it's going to be rolled out. But my concern would be, and this is me, I'm playing devil's advocate here, so forgive me, Gordon. How is it going to actually work? Because at the moment, yes, we're all in lockdown, and which is fine. But if we start to ease the lockdown conditions, how's it going to work? And especially even in lockdown conditions, in terms of when people are going to the supermarket and things like that, because the way the kind of virus can be transmitted. So I'd be interested to know how the kind of contact and trace element is going to work. But then again, that's me probably playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah, one of the problems so far, it seems, has been the inability of the United Kingdom to have enough facilities to do the tests. The First Minister has indicated 12,000 to become available by the middle of May to around 15,500. And I'm estimated that another 2,000 contact tracers would be required. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of people involved in this. 2,000 additional tracers, that's a lot of individuals. And usually they would be coming, I was going to say, usually they would be coming from the health service, but I would imagine that can't happen at the moment.
Well, the thing is they're going. Well, I would imagine what they're going to have to do is basically roll out a recruitment drive and give people, train people. So whether it's going to be people sitting in a call centre or people jumping in a car and go or over, how are they going to do it?
I guess call centres are probably the ideal places for this, really, aren't they? They have the expertise to cold call people as it is. They're always calling me anyway. I don't know about you.
Well, we're always getting those phone calls, aren't we? But it would probably mean there's a call centre would be probably the more ideal situation, but time will tell. We'll soon find out, I guess.
Well, I would say probably that all of these
screening programs that go on, and there are all sorts of other things where our health is looked after on a database basis. So these things are already set up.
So you believe the infrastructure is there already, Dave?
Well, I think a lot of the infrastructure is. It's just a question of joining the dots.
Maybe just making sure that they have the staff in the right places at the right time.
That's right.
Okay. Well, listen, none of this, of course, is going to be any use unless they stop the massive influx of people travelling into the United Kingdom, especially via air travel. So that leads us nicely into our second story tonight, which is a Scottish MP has ramped up pressure on the UK government over health checks at travel centres. It's like Sorry, I beg your pardon, I didn't say that terribly well. An MP has ramped up pressure on the UK government over travel health checks and quarantining. The SNP's Joanna Cherry QC MP once again has written to the Home Secretary, renewing calls on the UK to implement health and quarantining measures for people entering the UK from abroad at airports and other points of entry. The party's Shadow Home Secretary has ramped up pressure on the UK government to follow steps taken by other countries, including Germany, South Korea, New Zealand and Ireland, that have introduced tighter measures to respond to the pandemic, including 14 days quarantine for all new arrivals. The MP last month wrote to Priti Patel over concerns that hundreds of thousands of people entered the UK without appropriate checks and have yet to receive a reply. The Scottish Government has raised the issue with the UK Government, encouraging it to carefully consider issues around testing and isolation for those coming into the country as part of any measure going forward. In commenting, Joanna Cherry, QC MP, has said, I wrote to the Home Secretary last month on the urgent need for the UK Government to introduce coronavirus health checks and or quarantine measures for people travelling to the UK. It's disappointing that this correspondence has still not been responded to. Other countries such as Germany, New Zealand, South Korea and Ireland have taken steps to strengthen border checks, including asking arrivals from abroad to self-isolate for 14 days, leaving the UK as an outlier when it comes to the checks. Now, Sam, this I know is probably one that will get your goat as well. For some reason, the British government is not following what we might call best practice in this case of actually, not closing the borders, but at least putting measures in place so that people entering the country can be checked for COVID-19 and if they are suspected or even if they're not, presumably be quarantined for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To me, that if you've got a pandemic and you're trying to slow down a contagious virus, one of the first things you do is not so much close the borders, but at least put testing in place and put restrictions in place.
Well, of course,
saying you need to close the borders, but you need to put some sort of testing in place and make sure people are quarantining themselves. To me, it's just common sense, but for some reason, common sense
it's not very common.
Kind of run easily from the UK government,
well,
does it?
One of the reasons I came to you first, Sam, is as a pet owner, you'll be aware, of course, something which Chris McCusker said last week, which is that anybody bringing a dog or a cat into the United Kingdom from abroad is forced to quarantine the animal for 2 weeks.
Yeah. But then again, and it's just to me, it's common sense. It's just, you've got this highly contagious virus that's going around, and they're telling us all to lock down and social distance and all these other things, and yet you've got travellers coming into the UK without any checks whatsoever. And who's to say that this, that if there wasn't. Again, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm in one of those moods tonight, Gordon. So be aware, be warned. I'm giving you a pre-warning here. That if maybe these checks were in place from day one, the kind of virus wouldn't have transmitted around the community quite as bad as what it has done.
Of course,
you know what I mean. So you've got, So why isn't the government putting these?
You would think this would have been one of the first things they'd done. If I could come to you, Dave, for a moment, because we've already been discussing what happens in terms of things like livestock. And of course, livestock moving from country to country would also be inspected and they would be traced. And the standards, it seems, for animals are higher than they are for human beings.
Far higher, yes. That's absolutely correct. But this is the problem. We're not dealing with animals. Humans are animals, but you know what I mean. The control of human beings is not nearly as simple as controlling animals.
Well, I guess there has to be an element, I suppose, of consultation and cooperation from the people that you're trying to protect. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to have been any actual action taken by the UK government across the entire United Kingdom, which is what you would have expected them to do if they were acting as one country. But they just don't seem to have done it.
The Ebola thing was going, did they not let people come up from Heathrow into Scotland, even though they had been in contact with Ebola?
I've no idea, Dave. I mean, that was something we would have to verify. But I have heard anecdotal evidence of people coming back from Australia who came directly into Heathrow and then from Heathrow to Glasgow and didn't go through a single check
Yes.
about their health or COVID-19 or anything else. And they were appalled by that.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's obviously something which really should be done. Let's hope the British government listens. Pardon me. Okay, we'll move on now to the Scottish Government's Caring Communities campaign. People helping those in their communities affected by the coronavirus, pardon me, are being encouraged to carry on while following advice to keep themselves and others safe. The Scottish Government's Caring Communities campaign will celebrate the help people are already giving each other and encourage safe and effective help like keeping in touch, shopping, picking up prescriptions and running errands for those who are unable to. The Communities Secretary, Aileen Campbell, said, "Together we can help each other through the challenges ahead, and Caring Communities campaign will recognise the efforts of people from across Scotland who are supporting and helping others." It's been inspiring to hear how people have responded to this pandemic by offering help to those around them, whether that's been formally volunteering or informally helping out neighbours and friends. We all have a part to play in supporting those around us. However, we want to make sure that it is done in a safe and effective way. The National Clinical Director for Scottish Government, Jason Leach, said, "Many people need help and support, and some will feel particularly isolated and lonely. If you're able to help alleviate that in your street, your neighbourhood or community, then we're asking you to do so." So let's start with Day this time. Day, I know that you live pretty much alone yourself, and you are isolated as a farmer.
Well, I'm not alone. I've got a husband.
You have a husband, Day. I'm sorry, what I meant was you're more isolated where you are, and perhaps I should rephrase that.
We
Sorry.
are and we aren't. We're a very close community in the two villages, in the 12 villages in the southwest region of Stirling. And we all speak to each other. We have meetings and we Skype each other and all that sort of thing. So although I might appear to be isolated, I have never felt isolated.
Well, that's excellent.
And also, throughout the lambing, I've had my agricultural contractor living in, so he's been here as well. So the three of us have been working away on the lambing. I think I didn't visit any shops for about 6 weeks because instinctively we store food anyway. It's what we do when you're living alone and you're reasonably isolated. We're very, very lucky in the rural areas, and we're particularly lucky in the area in which I live with the kind of community that we've got.
Typically, farming communities are very close-knit because in many cases farmers share equipment, they share tasks as well, particularly harvest times and, as you say, at lambing times. So there's a tradition of that. But perhaps that's not quite so prevalent in cities. And if I come to you, Sam, I don't know what it's like where you live. Have you noticed the people really helping each other out during this really difficult time?
I've seen two sides of the same coin. I've seen people being amazing, helping each other out, and then I have seen people who, and I think we've spoken about this before, where where people have attempted to help each other out, and then you've got people naming and shaming on Facebook saying, such and such went to such and such's door and things like that, which is a shame. And also what we've seen quite a lot of and what we're getting locally is there's been a call to close down the cycle track here to stop people from using the cycle track because people believe that is encouraging people to go out. And I think people are misunderstanding what the conditions and the regulations and things. People need to get out.
Yeah,
especially
I think
people living in flats or on their own. They've got to get out.
I was just going to say, I think that this Scottish Government's Caring Communities campaign is largely aimed at trying to educate people how to stay safe if they're trying to help somebody who is either lonely or isolated.
My particular street that I live in, we all help each other. We always do tend to come together during the kind of winter and things like that, and we do tend to help each other out. And we do what we call swapsies. Where if somebody's been shopping and they know somebody else like something and having difficulty getting it, they'll pick it up and things like that.
Yeah.
And we kind of swap products and things. You know, it's all within the safe distancing measures and things, and we're all very careful. But we generally do tend to kind of help each other out in the street, which is quite nice.
Do you feel that the
nice.
Scottish Government could do more to help educate people about what it is safe to do if they're trying to help
Yeah,
somebody?
I think there needs to be more education on what's safe to do and what's not safe to do, because I know that in order for me to go shopping, I've got to go on the cycle track to cycle into Dumbarton, because I'm in a village. So yeah, there needs to be a kind of pretty much a kind of education drive, you know, that people are allowed to go out within reason. You know, obviously, you know, it's not normal life, but, you know, we are allowed to go out for exercise. We are allowed to go out for shopping and medical supplies and things. And there needs to be, and the thing is as well, with the education system, with the schools, they're actually giving the kids weekly sets of homework. And my wee one this week got, it's like a bingo grid, and one of the things is to go outside and collect stones, leaves, flowers, and things like that. So it's to encourage the wee ones to get outside. So if people are seeing kids outside kind of collecting things, you don't want to kind of scare them off and say, oh, you shouldn't be going out, or, you know, because it's part of education as well.
Well, listen, Sam, thanks for all of that advice and comment. Dave, did you have something to say there? I noticed you were trying to cut in there.
As ever. Yes, the shocker, of course, was all those people going to Braehead to Costa Coffee. I mean, really, at what point does anybody ever think that is a necessity? You know,
depends how addicted to coffee you are, Day, I suppose.
Well, I just wondered, I thought to myself, well, are these all unionist supporters who've taken the lead from Boris, who seems to think that we've reached the peak and it's going to get better from now on?
So we can all go out and enjoy ourselves. Well,
yes, because it was very timely, wasn't it?
Mention of the Prime Minister has actually led us rather neatly to our next subject, actually. And this is that the Vote Leave artificial intelligence firm has been winning 7 government contracts in the last 18 months. An artificial intelligence startup that was hired to work with Dominic Cummings on the Vote Leave campaign has been awarded at least 7 government contracts worth almost £1 million in the space of 18 months. Faculty, which has links to senior Tory figures in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office, is rapidly expanding its reach into various corners of Whitehall, and last year it was tasked with finding ways to apply artificial intelligence across government. The Cabinet Office Minister Theodore Agnew, who's responsible for a government department that promotes the use of digital technology within public services, is resisting calls to sell a £90,000 shareholding in the company amid claims of conflict of interest. On Friday, it emerged that Faculty's Chief Executive Mark Warner attended a meeting of the government's Scientific Advisory Group on Emergencies, SAGE. Faculty's connections to the upper echelons of government appear to run deep. The firm's first high-profile contract was supplying data services to the Vote Leave campaign, which Cummings ran before becoming Boris Johnson's chief political advisor. Cummings has for years maintained a blog documenting, among other things, his enthusiasm for the disruptive potential of new technologies and artificial intelligence. Faculty is run by Mark Warner, whose brother Ben Warner, a data scientist, was reportedly recruited to Downing Street last year by Dominic Cummings after running the data modelling for the Conservative Party's general election campaign. Ben Warner is a former senior employee at Faculty and is also said to have worked on Vote Leave. Ben Warner hit the headlines when it was revealed that he and Cummings have been attending meetings of SAGE, which provides advice to ministers on COVID-19. Faculty is working at the heart of the government's response to the pandemic, and it has been processing large volumes of confidential UK patient information in an unprecedented data mining operation alongside Palantir, a US firm founded by the libertarian billionaire Peter Thiel. Mark Warner disclosed in an article in The Times that he too attended critical meetings of SAGE in March before the lockdown was imposed. He argued that he needed to align Faculty's work with that of the rest of the government, including SAGE. Faculty said he attended SAGE as an observer. Faculty's work on the coronavirus response is only the latest government project that is secured under the Conservative administration. Dave, if I could come to you first on this. I don't know about you. This strikes me as being a little bit of nepotism, perhaps. What do you think? Dominic Cummings' friends getting jobs as companies making money from government contracts?
Yes, nepotism is almost a polite word, given what has happened with the people involved. It's not like we weren't aware of Cambridge Analytica and all the spider web links behind that. Carol Cadwallader has been warning us for a long, long time, many, many years now, about this spider's web of disruptors across countries. And here we have them in the heart of the UK government. It beggars belief that the opposition and even the good Tory MPs, because there must be some, aren't doing something about this.
So do you think that that Dominic Cummings' influence in government affairs in general is reaching too far?
Absolutely.
Well, that's a great answer, Zay. I don't think we need any more of an emphatic answer than that. If I might speak to you, Sam, about this. Dominic Cummings, as we know, has become a kind of I don't know, what would you call him, a Svengali of Downing Street, some people have called him, but he seems to be the man in the background who's pulling a lot of strings. Now, this seems that he's giving some of his friends some of these plum contracts.
Yeah, it's very much...
well, it appears that way.
Very... it's kind of getting into dangerous waters, isn't it, really, in the terms of how people may see it or allegedly see it. And I'm not really surprised. I'm not really surprised that this has been going on and happening.
Well, I guess
it's a difficult one because obviously there's kind of legal implications and things like that. And I know what my feelings are on it and my thoughts, but I don't think I would really want to kind of air them publicly in terms of, it's okay having my private thoughts about it. But I think all I'll say is I think it's kind of leading into dangerous waters of kind of how other people might perceive of what's going on, which is not very good.
I guess when Mr. Johnson or Dominic Cummings is looking at this, they look at the success of these companies and what they did once before with the election campaigns and with Vote Leave. And if their data gathering and their handling of the data has produced such political successes, maybe they think that they can apply this to the problem of contact tracing as well and other things.
Well, I think it's again, it's all about perception of whether it's been from what side of the coin you're on, and to whether it's been successful or unsuccessful. Data, as we've had discussions on the programme before about data gathering. Data,
of course, the problem
is money. It's worth a lot of money. And you just kind of, and I always think with a lot of these data gatherings, what's the bigger picture, what's the end game of it, and
what happens after the virus is finished.
So I'm very kind of wary of them, but I'm not surprised, to be honest. I'm not surprised. And in terms of Cummings, I mean, he's really Boris Johnson's the face of the government, but it's like, in my opinion, that Cummings is actually the one that's leading the country.
He does seem to provide a lot of the direction for government. That's certainly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The question is who's behind Dominic Cummings. Anyway.
Well, there's that as well, isn't there? Yeah. You just wonder how far it goes,
But the thing is, remember we discussed recently the idea of this test and trace application for phones, this app, and the fact that it was going to be running a central database. And should Scotland be using a system like that, where we don't know what will happen to the data after the coronavirus has passed? Dave, what do you think?
As long as it's got nothing to do with Dominic Cummings and all the spider's web that goes along with it, I trust our government. But
question day is that this information is being gathered by our own security services because they are involved in the design of this app. Would you trust them to
Our Scottish security services?
UK security system security services?
Well, that means Cummings has his fingers all over it.
Well, I think that's the issue, isn't it? Who do you trust with your information? I think that's what it comes down to. The UK government or the Scottish government?
Scottish government.
Well, would you want the Scottish government to use this app, though, on our behalf, or to recommend it?
No, and Twitter was quite clear as well. As
Yes.
long as it has links to Dominic Cummings and his ilk, nobody is going to want to use it. You can't be forced to use it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it described as a sort of Trojan horse. It's given as a gift, but it has a secret ulterior motive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, listen, speaking of ulterior motives, the government was also accused a little while ago of being a bit too secretive about who is on its advisory committee. Before I get to that, Sam, I know we discussed this ourselves not that long ago, the idea of this app, and it now appears that it is the security service in the UK which is setting this up. It's basically the advising on how to do it. Can we trust the British intelligence, shall we say the British Intelligence Department, with our data? Would you trust them?
No.
No.
That's it. No.
Well, we've been told that Google and Apple in Europe have refused to use a centralized database, and yet that's what the British government is deciding to.
Pardon is no.
Okay.
Just a plain
Well, listen.
old, good old-fashioned no.
Well,
Or in a nice Scottish way, no chance.
everything that the British government is doing at the moment seems to be surrounded by a veil of secrecy, and the UK government has published today the names of some scientific emergency advisor group participants. The UK government on Monday published the names of participants of its scientific advisory group for emergencies, the group which is helping the Prime Minister Boris Johnson to respond to the coronavirus outbreak. The 50-member list included Patrick Vallance, the Chief Scientific Advisor, Neil Ferguson from Imperial College, Graham Medley and John Edmonds from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Two other participants declined to give permission for their names to be published. The government also published the membership of other health and scientific groups advising them. Now, this seems to be a knee-jerk reaction to criticisms of the British government in the past week that it has not been publishing the names of people who are on these committees, and only recently have they started to sort of drip feed these out to the press. Do you think there is a problem with British secrecy? What is it that you think they might be hiding here?
Well, they're clearly protecting Boris and the Russian links.
The Russian links, did you say?
I think it's as basic as that, because the spider's web includes Cummings, and there's two brothers who were on the Vote Leave campaign.
Yes.
Leadership group, and they appear to be on this scientific committee, or one of them does.
Well, he's apparently sat in on a SAGE committee meeting as an observer, according to government officials.
When you say he, you mean Dominic Cummings?
No, this was one of the Warner brothers that you mentioned. Ben Warner and I can't remember the other one. I mentioned him earlier on. So they are, one or both of them have attended these SAGE meetings, and it seems now that the British government's having to come clean on who actually is on the SAGE committees, because nobody until now knew, and we didn't know why it was secret either.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they are having to come clean, because they appear to be completely out of control. With this 80-seat majority, they're just doing their own thing and flouting all general decency in terms of parliamentary democracy and good behaviour.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be very much cross-party cooperation. There just seems to be that, the Tory way of doing things, and everybody just has to accept it. Sam, what do you think? This is very much in keeping with what you have been warning about, I think, in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's very much very secretive and very much the Tory way, do as I say rather than what we do. And
Yep.
I like to believe that a majority of the members are employed directly by the government. So that's kind of so how impartial are they? Because I know that Sir David King, a former chief scientific advisor, who's been very critical of the current SAGE committee, saying that whenever he was part of SAGE and he ran it, he always kind of made sure everybody was independent from the government and, pretty much expertise in their fields. And I know he set up his own independent SAGE advisory group as well, which is quite
I heard
good.
That was done today.
Yeah, that was today. They had their first meeting today.
So,
I only managed to see half of it, which was actually very informative.
Do you think, Sam, that scientists who formed this new group, which is not aligned to the government, which were not hand-picked by government, do you think they formed this group because they feel that the SAGE group is actually not giving the best advice to the government?
Yeah, there's too many secrets. There's not enough information. There's so much cloak and dagger. And that's part of the problem with the current SAGE committee with the government.
Of course.
We're getting told about it's based on the science and by this modelling and, all these wonderful paraphrases, but nobody knows where they're getting that from, where's the basis. Watching, as I say, only seen half the meeting today from the independent SAGE committee, and it was actually quite good because they were talking about information comes from various countries. Alison Pollock, who's been on Broadcasting Scotland, is a member of it as well, Professor Alison Pollock, and there's some great people there. And it was they're experts in their field. Common sense approaches. They were the bit I got up to was they were talking about common sense approach of coming out of lockdown. Things. Yes. They were talking about how herd immunity has been, a biological scientific phrase has been kind of, been let out of the bag, so to speak, and it's now became something else, meaning something else. So it was actually quite informative. In the kind of part of that I've seen, I learned quite a lot, and it made me feel I would actually feel more secure and safer with these group of experts. Okay, well, listen, Sam,
I'm going to have to stop you there so that we can move on. But thank you for that.
No problem.
Interesting information as well. We're moving on now, and the next story is the United Nations is calling for a COVID vaccine and treatment for all. The United Nations leaders called on Monday for a global effort to develop and distribute to all, at affordable prices, vaccines, treatments and testing kits against COVID-19. These tools will help us to fully control the pandemic and must be treated as global public goods, available and affordable to all, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said at the start of the Global Pledging Conference, which aims to raise at least $8 billion to fight against the coronavirus. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said at the same event, "The ultimate measures of success will not be how fast we can develop tools, it will be how equally we can distribute them. None of us can protect a world in which some people are protected and others remain exposed." Now this seems, on the face of it, to be an appeal from the United Nations to all governments to work together. The question is, do we think, Day, do you think that the British government will be prepared to work together with other world governments to try to make the cure or a vaccine available at an affordable price to all?
No, not this particular British government. I think in the past British governments would have, but this particular one definitely not. It's the same as America. It's a commercial race as far as they're concerned. And I suspect the British government is more about kudos than making money. Whereas the Americans, although they want to be great, it's about making money. And I think this sort of leadership from the UN has been long and slow in coming.
Indeed.
But we do need it. We need this sort of global leadership, and they're probably the ones to do the leading.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the vaccine for the COVID virus is that if it's patented, it becomes it becomes something valuable to a company. If it becomes common knowledge, if it's open source, as they say in the media, then every country could make it, and that would hopefully make the whole thing affordable. The question is, will governments like the American government and the UK government allow that to happen? If I could come to you next, Sam, on this. I've read today, actually, that the UK government, although it had been saying that it was developing its own vaccine in Britain, it now appears that work being done by British scientists is part of, believe it or not, a European or a pan-European programme. But the British government is not presenting it that way.
You mean it's not being done in Oxford?
What do you think, Sam?
I read similar today as well, which I was quite surprised, because my view and understanding is very similar to Day's. I think that other governments, UK governments, would have been quite happily to share the information, but with the language that they're using, it's them. They're creating it, and it's their thing, a bit like America, and they wouldn't share the information. So I was quite surprised when I read that today as well, because the UK government is certainly not telling people that they're working alongside other member states of Europe. But no, I think that even though they may be working alongside, my gut instinct still tells me it's all about money. It's all about, if it's out in the open market, it's going to become affordable. It's then available to everybody to afford. Fortunately, my view of the UK and America is all about money, and I think they would be, if they develop it first, it will be patented, and it'll only be a certain amount of people that can afford it.
It's been said in the past in America that American pharmaceutical companies benefit when America is sick. They don't benefit from curing people, they benefit from treating them. And I'm wondering actually whether their attitude to the coronavirus is still stuck in that mindset. What do you think, Dave? Have you got an opinion on this?
I think it's even more so nowadays under Trump. Because all he can think about is profit and business.
Well, Donald Trump really is, to be fair to the man, he's not a politician, he's a businessman, and he seems to perform all of his political policies as some kind of transaction.
But that's why he makes such an appalling leader of a country.
Well, some Americans seem to really love him, apparently. In some cases, you would have expected his popularity to decrease, but it's either held firm or risen, apparently. So I think we have a different view here from people in the United States.
Well, we've got a different view from down south as well, so I'm not surprised.
Well, the European Union, I'll come to our next story now, talking about how things are perceived. The European Union says that the UK, among European states, has yet to reach the COVID-19 peak. Now, this is despite claims by Mr. Johnson just in the last few days that we have reached the peak. The head of the European Union for Disease Control said on Monday that Britain was one of 5 European countries yet to reach the peak of its coronavirus outbreak, contradicting the British government's line. As of May the 4th, Britain has recorded nearly 190,000 coronavirus cases and almost 28,500 deaths. Only Italy in Europe has so far counted more deaths from COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who returned to work last week after himself being seriously ill from COVID-19, said on Thursday that Britain had passed the peak and was on the downward slope. Andrea Ammon, the director of the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, told EU lawmakers that Bulgaria was still recording an increase in cases, while for Britain, Poland, Romania and Sweden, the agency had seen no substantial changes in the last 14 days. For all other European countries, there was a drop in cases, she said. As of Saturday, it appears that the initial wave of transmission in Europe has passed its peak, Ammon told lawmakers in a video conference. The ECDC monitors all 27 EU member countries plus Britain, Norway, Liechtenstein and Ireland. So again, I think I'll come to you first, Sam, on this one. This is a case of Britain says one thing and the European Union says something completely different. The European Union says, contradicting the United Kingdom, they haven't reached the peak yet. What on earth is going on?
Well, yeah, I'd be surprised. The thing is, I think with the UK briefings, they're so desperate to do a good news story. They're always, and they keep, you see that all the time, they keep saying we've passed the peak and it's coming down. When we know, if you look at the graphs and things, we know we've not passed the peak. The figures, I mean, the figures came down today because it's Monday, but there's a chance that the figures will go back up tomorrow again. And it would be great to think we're past the peak, but just going by the graphs and the figures, we've just kind of evened out, which, I mean, given a kind of understanding the virus and how it kind of works, I mean, I think what are we, about 2 weeks since the Easter holidays? So
Yep.
There was an influx of people kind of going out round about then. So, you know, all those people that may have transmitted the virus, we've still got to see that in the figures. And then we've got a bank holiday coming up as well. So, and I know at the weekend there, on Friday there, the 82 sounded a lot busier.
Yeah.
So there was more people travelling around. So I think, yes, I mean, the figures may be kind of becoming a bit more kind of stable because of lockdown.
I think it has flattened out, but I don't think it has passed the peak
it's
yet.
It's not coming down.
Anyway, I would like to move on to our next story, if that's okay. That is, this is to do with prisoners this time. This is a section of society that we rarely think about. Short-term prisoner release, this is. The regulations to allow a limited number of short-term prisoners nearing the end of their time in custody to be released early have been laid in Parliament to help tackle the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak. The move will help prison and healthcare staff to continue to safely manage those who remain in their care during the outbreak and follows prisoner release measures taken across the world, including elsewhere in the UK. The scheme is limited to those sentenced to 18 months or less and who on the 4th of May have 90 days or less left to serve in custody. Detailed restrictions will be in place to exclude certain groups of prisoners from the process based on the previous offending. With regulations in place, prison governors can take further steps, including liaison with local authorities and third sector community justice partners, to prepare for appropriate individuals to be released gradually over the next 28 days. Up to 450 prisoners will be considered for early release. Reductions in Scotland's relatively high prison population will increase the availability of single cell occupancy, which in turn will help to contain the virus and make prisons safer for inmates, prison officers and NHS staff. If I might speak with you first, Day, on this one. This sounds like a perfectly sensible idea in principle. Can you see any problems with this, or do you think this is a reasonable step to take?
I think it's a reasonable step to take, but there's always human error, and I don't know whether it's in Scotland or not, but I did read that some mistakes
it is in Scotland,
had been
Davis,
made.
yes. It is for Scotland, yes.
Is it? So I don't know who or what kind of prisoners or what kind of criminality they've committed.
I think it's only non-violent offenders, Day, that are being released. So it might be, I don't know, fraudsters or pickpockets or something like
mistakes?
that. I'm sorry, Dave, could you say that again?
If they're non-violent, why are they categorised as mistakes?
Well, not mistakes, it's just that they're in jail for very short time periods of a year and a half or less. It's basically to stop them getting the virus and to stop the spread or reduce the spread of the virus in the prison population.
Yes, I understand all that, but I did read that some prisoners who shouldn't have been released had been released by mistake. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Well, that has happened historically in the past, but I believe that, according to the report that we have, that there will be safeguards in place. It's part of a campaign to release only those who are not likely to reoffend or not likely to harass other individuals once they've been released.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sam, what do you think? Good idea? Bad idea?
As long as all the safety nets are in place, I think it's a good idea. As long as the people that are being released with support out on in the world. There's got to be make sure that there's support there with social work and possibly mental health, whatever support they need. As long as these things are in place, then yes, because the last thing you want to do is release someone from an institution like a prison and put them out into society and there's no support mechanisms there because and that's not going to do anybody any favours whatsoever. It's not going to do the person any favours and it's not going to do society any favours. So, and I think as long as there's everything's there in place, I think it's a good idea.
Basically, I think what people have been saying is that a short-term prison sentence shouldn't be a death sentence.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, listen, I'm going to move on to another story now. And this one, I think, will resonate with millions of people across Scotland. Coronavirus. A surge in energy bills could leave more Scots at risk from fuel poverty. The SNP has renewed pressure on the UK government to urgently support workers and families after consumer groups warned that an increase in energy bills due to the coronavirus lockdown could leave more Scots at risk from fuel poverty. The call for action follows a survey published today by the comparison site comparethemarket.com that shows large numbers of people staying at home. Households in the UK could see a 37% surge in energy bills, an average of increase of almost £32 a month. It also found that 72% of those asked said that they had increased their energy usage during the lockdown. Citizens Advice Scotland warned that there is a risk with the increase in bills is more likely to affect those who are already struggling financially, adding to that even before the coronavirus outbreak. Hundreds of thousands of people were already struggling with energy bills, with 1 in 4 Scottish households in fuel poverty. Last month, Uswitch also revealed that coronavirus pandemic could cost the UK's households a staggering £52 million more a week in energy bills. Drew Hendry, the SNP's shadow BEIS spokesman, said, "Millions of people across Scotland and the UK will rightly be following the government advice to work from home and to stay at home unless absolutely necessary. However, this will be hitting people's pockets and the extra use of appliances and energy while they're at home, and undoubtedly adding to any financial strain already being felt by many. It's vital that the UK government urgently introduces measures to support people and families, including through a package of financial measures for the self-employed, increased UK statutory sick pay to the EU national average, and strengthening of welfare protections by increasing child benefit and making universal credit more flexible." Now, I think I will come to you first, Day, on this one. To me, this seems self-evident that people are bound to be using more energy because they're at home more often, they're watching more TV, they're using their gadgets more, they're doing more washing, more laundry. It seems, like a no-brainer that they're bound to be spending more on energy.
Yes. Certainly for a large section of the population, the majority, that will be true. But for some people, that may, if they've got a job and their income continues, they will be saving on their cost of travel.
That's true.
The poorer sections of society, that they're the ones that are going to feel it really badly.
Yeah, and especially people with pay-as-you-go meters as well. I mean, if you're buying your electricity through a card meter, then it's nearly always at a higher price as well.
Yes. So it's like this. It's always the poorer people that seem to get the large wedge end of the stick.
Yeah.
And people who are better off actually may even gain by it.
They just seem to sail through it unscathed. If I might come to you, Sam, how do you think this would affect you? Have you noticed an increase in your household energy bills at all?
Oh yeah, I've got a pay-as-you-go meter, which I've had for many years, and normally about this time of year, especially with the lighter nights and things, we notice especially our electricity going down because you spend more time outside. As a family, we're out working, we're at school.
Your heating's off and your lights are off, yeah.
Yeah, things like that. Whereas now, because everybody's home,
there's a lot more meals to cook, a lot more washing up to do.
You've got more meals to cook. I'm obviously putting the kettle on a lot more for my coffee.
That's true, yes, I find myself doing that.
You just can't. And then the wee fella as well for schooling, because schooling's now online as well.
Of course.
So you need to make sure that you've got internet access.
Of course, you've got to have your Wi-Fi running, your computer up and running, your tablets running, and everything plugged into chargers as well.
Yeah, so it's constant.
Okay.
So
well, listen,
I would actually say that my fuel, in terms of my consumption of electricity at the moment on a weekly basis, is more than what it would be during the winter.
Well, that's quite something, Sam. Sam, listen, I'm going to have to leave the story there. We're coming up to our last story this evening, and that is the European Union Responsible Island Prize. Orkney has been awarded third prize in the EU Responsible Island Prize. The Danish island, Bornholm, is the first ever winner of the EU Responsible Island Prize. The Danish island won the title in recognition of its innovative energy solutions and its contribution to a sustainable and climate-friendly Europe. The award comes with a €500 cash prize funded by Horizon 2020, the EU Research and Innovation Programme. The second prize of €250,000 went to the island of Samsø in Denmark. The third prize, of course, the third prize of €100,000 went to the Orkney Islands in the UK. Now, the three winners have embraced a green agenda for decades, putting their communities at the heart of the transition towards a fully renewable energy system. The Orkney Islands have overcome a series of energy challenges and are now among the European leaders in using novel green technologies for decarbonisation. So very quickly, before we go to the credits, Dave, what do you think? The Orkneys have won a prize for being innovative with green energy solutions. Wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not surprised it's all Scandinavian countries.
Why are you not surprised?
Because they've always been innovative and they've always been in the lead as far as green measures are concerned.
Well,
Orkney
it's nice I was going to say it's nice to know that Orkney's catching up, but Orkney, of course, is right next to one of the biggest tidal stream energy suppliers in the country as well, which has just been built.
Yeah. Yes.
Sam,
and they raise beautiful beef.
Indeed, yeah. Sam, have you a comment on this one before we finish for the evening?
That's fantastic. And well done, Orkney. That's brilliant.
Excellent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole of Scotland could really be doing what the Orkney Islands are up to at the moment. And in fact, I think they probably will do in due course. Anyway, we're getting a little close to the end of the programme. One of the things I was interested in when I read this story, that it was the Orkney Islands, that they had to overcome a lot of energy challenges. Now, I guess that means, first of all, getting power to the islands, perhaps getting gas to the islands. I'm not too sure about that. But the Orkney Islands do seem to have got things pretty well sorted. I know that they are now running ferries, which I believe are green as well, or they're planning to operate ferries with hydrogen generated from wind energy. Anyway, we're coming up near the end of the programme, so I'm going to launch into my little appeal now. It's traditional at this part of the programme for me to ask for support for Broadcasting Scotland. And as you know, Broadcasting Scotland is run by volunteers. We make our programmes without adverts, and to do that we need your help. So if you'd like to become a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, you can do so by following the directions on your screen now. That is, go to www.broadcastingscotland.scot/register. And if you wish, you can also make single donations to that. Anyway, that's it from Broadcasting Oh, I'm just about to, I was about to forget something, that we are about to launch a new, we have launched a new app. It's an Amazon Fire app, I believe, Fire Stick app. So you will find details of that also on our website on how to use that as well if you wish. Anyway, that's about it from Scotland at 7 for Monday night. Oh, I'm okay. I've just receiving a request from On High to mention to you to share your links for Broadcasting Scotland with as many people as possible. As it is, we are doing well. We'd like to do even better. To do that, we need your help to spread the word. And so make sure if you're watching Broadcasting Scotland, share the link to as many people as you can. And if you're on social media, retweet or share on whatever platform you use. That's it from me at Scotland at 7 tonight. I'd just like to thank my two guests, Dave Tucker and Sam Payton. Thank you, ladies. And we will all see you again, well, I will anyway, on Thursday. In the meantime, Kenny will be taking over tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, well done, girl.